share my screen. Let's get this thing rolling. I appreciate everybody who's joining in. I'm pretty sure we're going to get more people join in as we go. We are recording these meetings, so those who cannot join us today, they can watch this afterwards, or if we need to review things that we've talked about, we can always come back to the video and check it out. So that's a very important note, right? We are being recorded. So whatever comments you make, whatever things you decide to share, make sure that it's not going to cause you trouble with your clients or your employees. You don't want to share things that are proprietary of your clients or employers. So always keep that in mind, please. Other than that, it's just a regular conversation. So what is this virtual brown bag thing? So by the way, I'm Claudio La Sala, in case you don't know me already. If you do know me, I'm still Claudio La Sala, the same one, just a little bit older probably. So what are these virtual brown bag meetings? So it's an online meeting where we get together and we share. It's a mix of things, right? It may be a bunch of tips and tricks. It may be tools that you use, that you love it, that you feel like other people should know about it. Maybe shortcuts that make you a lot more productive, maybe articles or books that you've read and have changed the way you do things or you think about things. Share those with the rest of us. Maybe experiences, maybe you've learned something the real hard way, you've had a real hard time. Well, share those, help some other people not go through the same pain that you did, right? Because they are most likely going through, pains of their own, and hopefully they will share those with us as well, right? So that way we get to grow together. Maybe frustrations or difficulties. You're trying to implement something, you're trying to deal with a situation in software, in a project, even in life, what the heck, right? Share those with us. Maybe somebody else has gone through the same problems and have a solution or something to point you in the right direction. This is not supposed to be a one-way conversation, right? So don't be shy to just, jump in and chat with us. This is different from like webinars and your typical presentation that we are getting a bunch of those, and they are very valuable. We like the brown bag to be more of a, it's like your water fountain conversation when, you're just walking down the hall and you bump into somebody and somebody asks you, oh, so what have you been up to? Oh man, I just implemented this thing that's pretty awesome. Let me show you. This is kind of what these meetings are all about. Logistics, we're going to be doing this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time. It's going to be on Skype, at least for now. This is we've been looking into different options to host these, and Skype has an offering that is free, and we can host up to 50 participants. So if we get to more than 50 participants, I guess that's a good problem to have. We'll cross that bridge if and when we get there and we find a solution where we can host more people. I also like this option because people don't have to install Skype or create an account. If they don't already have one, they can just click on the link and join in. I can, like I am like now recording, I will download the recording and then post it up on the Virtual Brown Bag YouTube channel to make it available afterwards. And for whoever wants to show up and either, want to share or learn, or doing both is even better. This is what this thing is all about. What have been shared before? So we've had 2 runs of the Virtual Brown Bag over the years. So back in 2009, I started the first Virtual Brown Bag, and actually on April 16th of 2009, right? So it's like Virtual Brown Bag's anniversary of the very first meetup today. So what a nice coincidence, right? So back then we've run for, I think, like 2 years doing weekly meetings. And the list that you see here are the things that some of the things that we discussed around that time, right? Some of these things are still very timely, right? Talking about patterns, talking about refactoring, talking about learning how to write tests, talking about, tips and tricks for Visual Studio or whichever tool of choice you use, technical debt. I mean, all these things are still pertinent, right? And we have videos online for those, and I'm going to be updating our website to make sure that people can still find those videos. And then back in 2016, George and our friend JB, they started the virtual brown bag again, and it ran for George, how long? A couple of months, I think.
I think it was. I think it was. We did about a year.
Oh, is that right?
We did
Excellent.
a
Yeah.
little under a year, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I remember I joined a couple of those, but that was right around the time when I moved back from Brazil to the US. So I had like a whole slur of different things to do. So I was able to only join a couple of those, but they are also available online. So the videos for those are still up and running. And now we are just getting started again because over the last couple of years, both George and I have been having people asking us, "Hey, when are you guys going to be doing, bringing the virtual brown bag back?" Well, what a better time to do it, than like right now when a lot of people are working from home or most people are working from home, looking for something to, maybe watch as you're grabbing a bite. If they are not hanging out with their family, which they definitely should, right? Make sure that you make up time to hang out with your people, right there. And if you have some time, on Thursdays, we are gonna be here, and just collect your tips and come share with us, or just come learn what others have to say. There is a virtualbrownbag.com website, which I just updated this morning to remove some of the links that were not working, to add a link to this meeting right now that people can just click on and join in. There is a link to the Twitter account for Virtual Brown Bag where we post things about the meetings, what's happening. There is a Slack that you can join where George and I and some other folks are there to discuss, potential things that we can bring up during a brown bag, or even continue a conversation. Maybe you're going to start a conversation right now and you're not going to have time to keep discussing it. Well, let's just take it to Slack and continue on with the conversation there, right? That's another good way to go about it. And I'll make sure to update this website to include links to the previous videos from the previous years, because there may still be something there of value for people. So make sure to bookmark that website to know what's up. All right, so let's roll. I guess I'll get started with some of the things that I can share with folks. Again, we can discuss. Just feel free to jump in whenever I'm mentioning something and you would like to talk a little bit more about it. Otherwise, whenever I'm done, I'm going to say, "I'm done. Who's next?" And then we just keep taking turns like that. So one of the things I'd like to share, improving, my employer is hosting a whole bunch of webinars, right? Presentations, lunch and learns, virtual lunch and learns. And because we've been doing lunch and learns at clients for the last several years, right? We go to the client, we bring pizza, we, deliver a presentation, and, we build up our network, we help out other people. So that's all good stuff. Of course, now, since everybody is working from home, we are doing that virtually, right? So if you go improving.com,
Started self pitch.
what was that, man?
I can't believe your first one is a self pitch.
Well,
Nice.
this is a free thing, my friend. I am never
Yeah.
shy of sharing free things, right? Because and that's the whole thing about these lunch and learns. They are all free. There is a boatload of content, right? So the upcoming ones are listed here on the site. The ones that have happened in the previous weeks, even one as recent as yesterday, right, where John talked about software architecture. You can go back and watch those. That's all available for free, right? So this is one way of us to, just continue giving back to the community, because one thing that we do at Improving is to host a whole bunch of user groups besides the lunch and learns that we give to clients also for free. And since we're not able to do that in presence, well, at least we continue doing that and helping out, because a lot of people like are out of a job now. They need to somehow, or they have an opportunity to refresh their knowledge, their skills. Well, there we go. We're sharing whatever we have across all the offices to bring that content to people. So that's one thing I can share. The other one, my website, a whole bunch of the stuff that I normally share at Brown Bag, they either come from my blog posts or they're gonna end up there, It's just one of my outlets of the things that I've been up to. So if you don't know the where my blog is, lasala.net, that's where you're gonna find. And one recent post was this: "What have you been up to?" Which is a question that we get asked a lot, right? What's happening with your life right now? What are you working on? What are your um, immediate goals at the moment? So from Derek Sivers, which is an author that I really enjoy his books and his TED talks, he has created these now pages, right, where he consolidates people who have now pages. And I said, well, let me do the same. So I created a now page on my website, which I'm going to be updating it. And what I'm thinking is I'll probably update it like every month or so, because I do, as part of my rituals, every month I do a monthly review where I go through like my short term, mid term, long term goals, and I see how I'm doing. Am I on track on the things that are important to me? How am I doing with that? And then I'll just go ahead and update this page so that people know what kind of stuff is Claudio up to, right? Because anybody who hangs out with me for like half an hour will figure out that I'm all about sharing whatever the heck I know that I can share. So if you see something there that I'm up to now that you would like to talk about, by all means, just ping me through whichever uh, means, and then let's talk about it. Like for instance, one thing that I'm doing is to finally learn Spanish for real, right? Because a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, but you're from Brazil. You speak, Spanish, right?" Like, no, I don't. That's not my primary language. So I'm finally actually getting to learn Spanish more, and I'm going through a bunch of things that I'm using to learn. And one of my personal goals is to actually deliver a talk in Spanish, like a technical talk or something about like software development process talk in Spanish. Like that's where I'm setting my stakes, which means, it's like, yeah, dude, you need to learn if you want to talk to people in that language, right? Which is not your primary one. So that's something that I'm up to. And other than that, just two other things that I will bring up. I've recently posted two uh, things here related to user stories that have been gaining traction. I've been hearing good feedback from a lot of people. One titled "The Purpose of a User Story," right? So, in short, if a user story does not tell you how you're going to be making money or saving money for the business, why is it a user story? That's in a gist what this post is all about. And then on another one is just my take on, sometimes people write user stories that are too cinematic, where the very important thing, they save it to the last part of it. So I'm not a big fan of the SA, I want to so that, because the so that part is the single most important part of a user story. If the so that sucks, your whole story sucks, right? So I'm one of those that subscribe with the idea of turning that around and starting user stories with, in order to, here, this is your business value. And then you take it from there, right? So I'm huge into that. I've been, I put that on my post. I got that from the Cucumber website maybe like 10 years ago or something like that. It made sense when they mentioned it there. I adopted that, and I've been really subscribing to that notion, and it has been saving me a lot of time in sprint planning meetings. It has promoted a lot of good collaboration and conversation between developers, product owners, because we start with the real important thing of the story. It's like, how are we building value? If that first sentence we cannot finish it, if not everybody on the meeting can actually understand what that first sentence means, it means that we're not doing a good job here, right? We need to flush that out better, think about it more. So those are like two posts that people have been telling me about how much they like it, and it has sparkled some interesting conversations in their team. So I wanted to bring it up, and that's it. That's what I had to. the same
Well,
role.
go back to the first post you shared because I saw it flash across the screen,
Okay.
and it's like the exact phrase I use all the time. Yeah, you said you had in there as a user stories are a placeholder for a conversation.
Yes.
I make that point every darn time I talk about it. I think I actually even have an article where I say the exact same thing.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
like every single book on user stories bring that up, and it's part of like the agile things and the you know it's just it is what it is, but people keep forgetting that, right? They write many times, write user story, put like in a TFS or Jira or whatever. It's like, oh, we're done. No, we're not done. We have to talk about it. What is there to talk about? There's a user story. Well, it's there for us to talk about it, right?
So one of the examples I like to use is if your user story is something like, as a floor manager, I would like a timer in my application in my UI so that I could measure how long it takes for people to get things done. One of the points I like to make is like, well, the first point of the first question of that conversation is really like, okay, can we go to the dollar store and buy a $1 stopwatch and just put it on your desk? Because like, if so, you should do that and move on to like solving a way harder problem because we've
Yes.
got like actually hard problems to solve.
Exactly. Yeah, and I do bring that up in this second post here, where sometimes if we just focus on that first sentence, being that sentence in order to, and you say this is the business value, based on that, people in the room might be able to say, you know what, we do not need software for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is already something out there that we can do, or maybe we just need to change our workflow or business process. It has nothing to do with software. And then people ask, well, but you're a software developer. You don't want to write software. Well, no, I'm here to help you, bring value to your business.
No, we shouldn't write software. There's too much software. That's a
Yeah,
problem. It's the best
right.
way of avoiding bad software.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
The best code is the one that's not being written, right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a really good concept from city planning that where there's a city planning website called Strong Towns, and they had an article a while ago called like this is why your roads always need repair, and they basically talk about how when city planning gets done, they typically look at it. They have a project proposal. They look at how much it costs, and they look at their budget and approve plus or minus, and they never really extrapolate maintenance costs into the future. I
Hmm.
feel like we do the exact same. Well, which makes sense a lot. Like you look at the road on your block, you're like trying to think, well, like how much maintenance does this road really cost? And you're like, how much tax revenue could they possibly be getting from all the people on this street? And there's like pipes underneath the road and electricity and all sorts of other infrastructure to worry about.
Right.
It makes
Right.
sense. Like, and once you start like tallying the maintenance costs in your head, you're like, oh man, like no wonder there's never enough money to fix stuff.
Right.
Um, but like we have the exact same thing in software so often. Where it's
Yeah.
like people aren't extrapolating that into the future. Too
That's
much software.
correct. Yep, yep. And actually, as you mentioned it, I remember the example that you brought up. You also had on that very nice blog post you wrote, right? I want to make sure to bring it up. How do I easily find that post?
If I wrote it, it's probably on my website, georgemaurer.net.
Right.
I think I'm still the first one that comes up. There's a band leader that like, ooh, that's not me. Interesting, but that's spelled correctly. I was just on there. Oh, no, I'm on there right now. What's going on? There.
All right,
That,
yeah, found it here. So for the folks on the call checking this out, so georgemaurer.net. I'm referring to this TDD with no more tears post that George wrote. That's really good. and it also talks about, from a testing perspective, right? But it goes back to, how are we writing our user stories? How are we writing our acceptance criteria? Because if we're doing TDD, if we are doing BDD, whatever DD you're using, really it all boils down to, do we know what we are building, and more importantly, why are we building this, right? What is the problem that we are actually solving before we write any line of code, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, excellent, cool. So if anybody on the call would like to jump in and make comments or ask questions, this would be a good time. Otherwise, George, if you want to go ahead and start, like, I don't know if you're going to share your screen.
I have stuff I could share, but I want to give anyone else an opportunity too, because once
Yeah,
I start talking, I can just keep going. So,
yeah, same. Same here.
anybody else here interested in sharing or talking about anything? All right. Well, do jump in and interrupt me if you do, or if you have any questions or stuff like that. This is not organized. It's a very so. I've been thinking. Let's see. How do I grab control? There we go. I've had it's getting to be the spring, and even though all conferences are getting canceled, I am kind of starting to think of kind of my next batch of conference stuff and what I want to talk about. And so there's one really big tool I I've been really focusing on for like the last half a year. I'll probably be talking about org mode. And org mode is a feature of Emacs, but it's spreading outside of it as well. Though by far it works best there, and I'm actually of the opinion that it's something that's worth picking up or Emacs for entirely. So I don't have time to cover it now. I could maybe talk about highlights, but that kind of opens up into another discussion, which is I don't need to show you. I'll share my camera for now. Which is what are I'm always like I'm pimping out org mode a lot, but I want to but like Emacs in general, I'm saying like look, there's a couple features of Emacs that like even if you don't use it for coding are really worth picking it up just for those features. So there's like a couple of these killer app features which nobody else does that I think are absolutely worth it. So I think just before diving into org mode more, which I'll be developing, maybe diving into in the future more, it'd be good to like just cover at a high level what I think those features are. So so I'd like to kind of talk through that and share it and show people that. So I have an Emacs window here. If those of you don't know, Emacs is by tech standards, ancient text editor going back to, I want to say the 80s. I think Richard Stallman started it, although it might even go back to the 70s. If you've heard of it, you probably heard of it in terms of um, the Vim versus Emacs debate, which is kind of silly because while they are distinct text editors, they do kind of different things. And I actually use Emacs with all the Vim key bindings, because all the Vim key bindings are actually better in Emacs. In fact, the fact that I learned Vim key bindings, I had tried to move to Emacs for a long time and just couldn't get it to stick. And the fact that I had learned Vim key bindings was one of the things that made it easier because it made me not so foreign moving in there. I was like, oh, okay, I know how to do basic editing here. So a couple things I want to talk about one at a time. So killer apps. When people ask me like, what is the deal with Emacs? What's so great about it? So first of all, this is an easy one to talk about, the window management. The window management in Emacs is by far the best I've ever seen. I want to split my window vertically like that. It's two key presses. I want to jump window to window. Notice the one I'm focusing on is getting larger. If you remember, that used to be a Sublime text feature called Golden Ratio. Yeah. I want to switch to another buffer I've used. Okay. I want to open up a shell right here. Um, right. I want to split this further and split that further, and then jump from there to there. Oh no, I have so many windows now. I want to jump back to the first one. Again, this is two keys, and notice how it's putting a letter in each buffer. So I just hit that letter to jump to that buffer. See, I want to go jump down to the lower right one, D. I want to jump up to the upper right one, F. Again, you can close them really easily. I can say, oh, I want to rotate my windows, like there. Rotate them back. So, like this ease of just being able to jump around and man stuff. Like I'm regularly splitting stuff, throwing it over there, throwing it over there, throwing it there, moving it around. Um, and just because it's so easy and actually uses my screen real estate so much more efficiently. And so this is like, it seems like a small thing, but it ends up being a big thing to the point like I tried to move to VS Code a couple of years ago, and it was like a real impediment. And I actually like went and like talked to some people at the VS Code team, and it was like, you know, can we, you're splitting panes. Can I have the one that I focus on be getting bigger? And they were like, well, there's actually like some, I don't remember what exactly they said, but there was something about like the way they did window management that makes that very difficult to implement. Like there's no plugin on it that even exists. So I think a lot of editors undervalue it, and I don't think any editor does it as well as Emacs. I mean, here I hit this. You can see right away all like the windowing options I have just from that, and all of them accessible with just like. So I hit space W, and that brings up this window, and any single one of these is available with these commands, right?
Okay. Is there an option to say, like similarly to, I guess, the big Visual Studio, like to tear off one of these editors to move it into a separate monitor?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hold on. It's is it? The terminology is different in the window in it. Hold on. I'm trying to remember. It's new frame, and I don't remember. Yeah, new frame. That's the way you do it. So there we go. So I've opened up a new frame. Instead of windows, they call them frames.
Okay.
But now you can jump easily back and forth between them with key short with space WO jumps back from one to the other, and it's actually views into the exact same stuff. The buffer list is exactly the same. I'm just literally jumping back and forth between the different ways. Like the terminology is different in Emacs because it's older.
Right.
Frames is what you normally think of like Windows. Panes is Windows in Emacs, and files is buffers, which
Okay.
is kind of a better concept because a buffer, a pane isn't necessarily just a file. It could be something interactive. It could be something that you can save yet, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually a very nice thing. Like you can see, I have a terminal down here. Like this isn't treated like in Visual Studio Code. Like the terminal is like a special case of a pane, and it's not that here. It's literally the same as any other window. That means any other window operations apply to it. There's not like any special shortcut keys that you have to learn or anything like that. In fact, like I could run ls and then go in and start selecting stuff and start copying it, come in here, paste it, all that stuff, and it's the same exact shortcut keys, which is really, really nice.
That is nice.
Yeah. Another thing I want to jump on, so Mogget. And let me, let's see, I want to show. So Mogget is a very popular plugin to Emacs. It's again a thing that I think is worth learning it by itself, even if you don't really use Emacs for anything else. There is actually a thing where a guy created where it's just command line, you launch it, and it opens up Emacs configured into just Mogget. So let me show you. Let me show you a good project. Let's see. I want to let me find one with like a bunch of commits. Oh, you know what? My blog. So I'm going to jump into a buffer with my blog in it, and I hit space.js now. So I open up Mogit. I have some unfinished articles in here. That's fine. Let's go ahead and one of the things that I always have a problem with in Git is I don't remember any of the commands because it's Git. It was designed by Linus Torvalds, and he's a Finnish psychopath who does not care whether people understand his interfaces or not. um, so um, he so I just I have to look stuff up every single time. This makes it easy. I'm going to hit question mark. Okay, here's how I launch any branching operations, any diffing operations. It groups all that stuff in a sane manner.
Oh, I like.
Um, what I actually want to do is I want to stash my changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hit Z. It pulls up my stash menu. All right, do I want to stash just the index, just the work tree? Do I want to stash both? Do I want a snapshot, which means stash, but also keep it, just push it onto the stash? Do I want to pull something out of there? Do I want to just look at what's in there? It's again, this is a beautiful compromise between a GUI and command line because it's just a couple keystrokes and you do get the menu and it's very simple and instantaneous and you don't have to reach with the mouse. So I'm just gonna stash all my changes right now. Oh no, I need to add them. Actually, I need to stage them, don't I? For stash to work. So I'm gonna go ahead and stash them right now. Great. I want to look at my log. There we go. We could jump to any point in this. I want to check out a branch. So again, one of my branch operations B. Okay, well, I want to look at what branch do I want to switch to? That one. I want to switch back to master. I want to create a branch. That starting at master named foo, right? It's just so much easier than having to remember all those shortcuts that like literally by itself. Just use this. Don't use the rest of Emacs. Just use this, launch directly into it. It's just a beautiful like GUI for Emacs. That's
Mm,
not even a GUI really. Um,
nice.
yeah, yeah, and of course because it'll all actually run in the terminal, though that's just not how people tend to use it.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So let's see. So Mogget is really cool. Okay, Tramp. So this will be familiar to. This is, I say these are killer apps and like that nothing else does. Something else actually does do this, and it's PowerShell, but it's beautiful nevertheless. So everything, all the commands I'm interacting with in Emacs, like kind of go through a layer in Emacs, and that layer can add stuff to it. So one of the things, okay, I have a terminal over here. Great, nothing special, whatever, right? I'm looking through there. Um, but I also, if I do this, I do Docker PS. I have a Docker container running right now, right? It's
Mm.
called MS SQL. Okay. Oop, I opened a window by accident. Here. Um, so I want to investigate what's in my Docker container. Now I could do Docker exec or blah, 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 or I could use Tramp, which is similar to the path providers concept from from PowerShell. So
Yeah.
I'm going to C to Docker :MSSQL/. Now notice I'm in the Docker container itself, right? When I ran PS, it actually did it from inside the Docker container, right? It's smart enough to do that. It's smart enough that all these commands I'm directing to it go into there. And
Mm.
again, when I say this integrates at every layer, it's like at every layer. So I'm going to run find file, which is open a command. So if I do, slash, like this is on my system right here,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay, so if I do the space, this right here is not inside of Docker. This is on my system. Here's my in my SpaceMax configuration file. Whatever, it's in there. I could open it. There you go. That's on my system. But if I open up that same window and prefaces it with /docker : MSSQL : look, it's even doing a finding on the in the Docker container for me.
Hmm.
Open up files directly through it. If I save it through here, it goes through the exact same layer. Doesn't save on my machine, saves in the Docker container itself. Um, there's a /SSH helper. I don't have any servers running right now, or else I'd show it. But all that stuff also exists. It's immensely powerful. In fact, if I look it up, Emacs Tramp, I think I could probably find all the different providers for it. P-Link, SMB client. There's one for sudo, so you can use that to jump directly into sudo mode. You have a file that you open without sudo, just do a file, and you want to save it. You don't have to reopen your file and lose your changes. You could do a save as and save it as to a sudo path, and just sudos it as part of the save. It knows how to convert that. There's apparently a Google Drive one. I should actually set that up because that is awesome. Yeah, so you do /G drive / yeah.
Huh.
Okay, I did not see that before, and that is super cool.
That is.
Um, yeah, yeah. So again, if PowerShell had this feature, I would say it was underused, except by people that really, really knew the hell out of PowerShell.
Okay.
But like if you've done it for like server management and stuff like that, there's a situation where you CD into the concept of SQL Server, and you can LS like the SQL databases themselves. It's kind of
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. So how well
Yeah.
does it work? Like if you're like in my case, I'm working both on a Mac computer and on a Windows. Can I
Mm-hmm.
seamlessly have the same kind of like settings and the same kind of setup so that as I alternate between them, I'm running the same things, or is there anything quirk about it?
So you mean when you're running if you're running Emacs on Windows? So personally, using Emacs on Windows has been difficult for me.
Okay.
And I admittedly I haven't spent a ton of time on it, but I did spend a little while. And the GUI version was just always slow. And I couldn't quite figure it out. And running it with WSL kind of worked, except half of the plugins didn't work.
Mm,
I think you can get there. I really think you can. You might not be able to run it with all the plugins. And I think WSL has been getting better. This was like 2.5 years ago, maybe, that I tried this.
uh-huh.
But I think if you're on there, I'm pretty sure it would be exactly the same. Like I really don't see why there would be any difference, because actually what this shell is, it's not Bash. It's something called eShell, which is Emacs's own implementation of a shell, which actually they take a lot of the common commands like ls, cd, like most of the POSIX commands, and re-implement them in Linux versions that kind of look exactly like the Bash ones, but add some features, add a little mini runtime to them. Like the syntax for doing a loop over things on in Bash is psychotic. The syntax for doing it in eShell is not. eShell for I don't do this often enough that I have it committed to memory, but it's like a very straightforward one. Like, so rather than doing crazy stuff like that in eShell, you're just like, doing that, or you put a command for I, and here's a command. Here's what you do: $I to reference the thing, right? Like,
Right.
this is a hell of a lot better than XArgs. It just is. XArgs is a pain in the ass.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but because of that, like it does all go through an Emacs layer, and that Emacs layer is what knows how to convert it from Okay, you're running a CD. Well, my current tramp provider is Docker, therefore it means I have to do Docker exec for it. Like that's really what it is. Um,
Okay.
and again, like because so I'm going to show this before, but because like it's all hooked up into the same thing. So I am opening up right now Dired, which is the directory browser, and I can open it directly into Docker. Right,
Mm,
it's inside of Docker right now,
okay.
and I'm browsing the directories in there. Um, and then I can open stuff from there, right? I can open that file. That file was apparently empty. Um, so yeah, Tramp is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Org mode is a huge. I mean, you have any more questions on Tramp? I can
No,
try.
that was it.
Yeah, org mode is a huge topic in itself, but there's a couple things here that I want to mention. First of all, this, I mean, you see, it's in many ways like a markup document, a markdown document. They have their markup. It's pretty nice. If you want to see what it actually is, it looks like this. So it's similar. It's a little different. Um, it's perfectly readable without it. You do have nice interaction. I'm hitting tab right now. It cycles through all the visibility modes. Okay, lots of stuff does that, but it is nice. What I find is I've been using this a ton for documentation of stuff, writing up documentations because it can do the basics of markup. It's doing the same thing that Markdown does, but it can do a lot more. You can embed images right in it. You can embed charts. You can drop into LaTeX and write LaTeX charts. Um, there's a way you can run, and I'll talk about this later. You can run like something like write a plant UML diagram. So like with like just the with just arrows, dash arrow, and then hit a shortcut key, have it converted in the image, and insert it directly in the document itself. And I actually use it a ton for note taking since I'm kind of like since I'm CTOing now. I don't even code that much, but I do take a lot of notes, and I actually wish I had started taking notes earlier, and I'm still working on getting better at it. But I mean, like, if there's probably a theme to this year I'm having, it's learn how to take good notes. It's also like the number one thing I am recommending to junior developers when I start. I'm like, all right, show me your notebook. Take notes. Take notes on absolutely everything. Just write shit down. It doesn't even matter if you look at it later. Make it part of your thinking process.
Yeah, I can speak to that if I can
Yeah,
jump in because for decades I've been pretty much focusing on taking notes on
yeah.
the computer. But of course, I mean, I type really fast, right? Touch typing, so I'm like typing almost as quickly as I'm thinking through things, which does not allow me to slow down to realize what I'm actually writing down. So just recently, I actually started like writing down on a piece of paper. So I keep like a little notepad on the side, and I write it down painfully and slowly because like my handwriting has never been great. And after so many years of just typing on the computer, it got even worse. So now I'm actually slowing it down to get my thoughts, to a clearer state. And then at the end of the day, I just snap a photo of it, send it into Evernote because then it becomes searchable, right? Because of the way Evernote does OCR, I can later recall these notes in an easy manner.
Mhm.
So yeah, totally on board with you there.
So yeah, I mean, in general, no, there's a quote that I saw that was attributed to Richard Feynman, and I'm pretty sure it's not. It's a misquote, but it's fantastic in general.
Okay.
And basically it says, notes are not a record of my thinking process. They are my thinking process. Like it's not just right. It's an actual tool you're using to organize your thoughts
Yeah,
and figure out how you're thinking about stuff.
I like it.
Yeah. Now, the way these documents become dynamic is really interesting because, like, so you see, I'm in a notes.org. Well, this is a silly. This is not. Why do I only have this in a notes.org file? And I actually have a lot more than this. So it has these features called narrow or widen because we have a tree. So if I remove the narrowing, you can see that the file I'm in actually has a ton of notes in it, right? Uh, so and so I can. So let's say I'm gonna jump to and I start looking for it. All right, here's from the time I went to a session about about getting our house raised. Um, I here are all my notes from there. I can narrow to that. Now I'm looking just at those issues, right?
Right.
Let's expand them all. Oh, there's a lot of stuff. You can do tables that auto adjust, and you can tap through them, make new rows. You could actually, it actually has features. You could use it as a simple spreadsheet, where
Okay.
you could add like columns together. You could have, obviously links between stuff, links to other places, right? All sorts of stuff like that.
Okay. What do
Um,
you do when you need to like drop an image or something like that? You need something visual.
so, yeah, let
I mean,
me
not
show.
that text is not visual. I
Yeah,
mean, not
so
use
here,
text to convey whatever it is that you're.
so here's an example that actually ties into. Well, let me see. I want to find a good example. Uh, yeah, here we go. Here we had something where I was trying plant UML. Let's see if I can get this working. Uh, it, One thing that is kind of a pain in the ass with Emacs, it's kind of single threaded when you tell it to do a thing, it just does the thing. So this is planned UML.
Oh,
See
I
right
see.
here. Yeah. So I write this out, and then I basically tell it execute this block, and it's going to execute it. It's going to generate this PNG. It executes it by passing this text to a plant UML stuff, and then it generates this.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I see.
Um, Now, so right here, these blocks are super powerful. This is from something called org babel. They're any language. In fact, I don't even like any new language, any new tech I'm starting. The first thing I do is I either find a Babel plugin for it or I make one, because it becomes so easy to to do samples here. So here's one I'm running is a shell one. I'm running a curl command to this thing that pulls COVID deaths in Orleans. And then I wrote like a really simple Python script that's going to go through and regenerate charts for it. Here's our deaths per day. You can't really see the bell curve here, so I smooth it out to a 5-day average, and now the bell curve kind of becomes more visible. It
Hmm.
looks like we're kind of cresting on the death bell curve, right?
In-
And notice that what I did, I'm not doing a curl here. What I did is I did a curl here with a shell command, which dumped it out to this table, and then passed the output of this block as a variable into this block. You can chain together different languages this way.
That cool.
In fact, let me see. Uh, yeah. Oh, okay. Let me see here. I created I created this repo. It's my daily programmer repo where just for solving programming puzzles, and I'm doing stuff in here. I'm actually doing the logic directly in the document. So okay, here's a problem statement. Okay, I'm thinking through it. Here's some examples. This is given this input, I would want the output to be 1. Basically, the question is, if this is a sliding board puzzle where the 0 is a space, how many moves will it take to get stuff in order, right? Okay, here it would take 1 move because you're doing that. Okay, here's another move. Here's some more stuff like that. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, well, here's a glossary of terms that I'm going to use. All right, thinking through it. All right, well, I need a prep, so I need to install PyTest. Let's think through it some more. all right, here's some examples. Like if I do that, all right, then that's kind of how it should work. And now I start actually writing like the little utilities for it. All right, this is maybe what the solution depth looks like. This, maybe I'll write some more utilities, right here, right? What might those look like? Okay, now I want to grab this and I want to run it with some test data, and see what kind of output it produces. Let's now take all that and stitch it together. I have all these blocks that I've defined where they've got little bits of them as I'm thinking together, all the pieces. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch it together. So I'm taking all those stuff, we're running it. When I execute this, this is the outside output I get. Okay, so if my input is this, then I'm getting this output. So that looks good. But if I got it right, then just doing something like this, creating tupleized iterable, it should work. And I'm running it on some examples, and it does. And I can actually take some of those tables of desired input, desired output I created above, pass it in as input into here to verify it. In fact, I can use that to generate tests. to generate tests, and then turn around and run PyTest on the tests that I just generated. Right? So like if you look at what's happening here, I execute this document, it actually takes all those pieces that I wrote, stitches them together into this file, stitches the test stuff into this file. Where is it? There, into this file, right? And then executes the entire thing. Nope, that's the wrong document. Executes the entire thing using PyTest, which I installed in here, and dumps it out to here. And it's just super cool and such a very nifty, very enjoyable experience for coding it. Like this is literally so. The Donald Knuth had the concept of literate programming. This was it. This is what he was going for, kind of. And you can do it, and I mean, because it's just because his whole conception is like, rather than writing files targeting a computer so it can run it, why don't we write code so that humans can understand it, but that implies being able to write stuff in whatever order makes sense for you to explain it, which is hard when you're writing a program.
Yep.
But the missing step that we kind of don't ever do, and this does, is that you write your stuff in the way you want and then generate it out to a code file. So if you look right here, I defined all those blocks above. This is the block where I'm saying, here's how you assemble all those different blocks in this order, and then you generate it, right? So yeah. It's a very, very neat idea, and I use it all the time just to learn stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah. This gets really cool when you do ops with it, because you, like I said, you can run shell commands with it. So like a lot of times when I need to do something in Bash or ZSH or whatever, and especially because it all works with Tramp, I'm just running stuff directly in here, just dump an output to here. Okay, next step, maybe write a little bit about what I did just now. Next step, create another block. Again, run the next command. There's a whole series of videos called Literate DevOps with Emacs, or I think with org mode. Yeah, Howardism. This guy has a series of articles and a series of videos on how he does it, and it is badass. It is like really cool. He's jumping around computers, he's taking stuff, firing off commands to like a bunch of different computers, multiplexing the output, putting it into his document as a table, so he can like examine it. It's just neat, committing the whole thing.
That is very cool. I'm taking note of that because I want to share that link with some friends.
Yeah. Here, I'll put it in the chat. I will note, by the way, for people who are like, I can't, I'm not going to start Emacs.
Uh,
You do something very similar with Jupyter notebooks. Um,
yeah.
not quite as slick. You can't jump around between languages as easily and pipe stuff from one language to the other. But you can still do a lot of this with Jupyter notebooks. And if this isn't a tool that you use, then Jupyter Notebook should be a tool that you use, or maybe Xamarin Studio or something. No, Xamarin workbooks or Wolfram notebooks. Some sort of notebook programming environment should absolutely be part of like everyone's tool set.
So here's my request for you then. This is the first time I'm hearing of those tools. Would you be able to give us like a quick run maybe next week on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, Jupyter. I can talk about. Yeah, I can talk.
Excellent. Yeah, that'll be great because this is the first time I'm hearing, and since I value your input, and you're saying that we should all have something like that on the toolbox. Well, heck,
Yeah,
tell me about it.
yeah.
Very
All
cool.
right.
Well, thanks for sharing, man. I think this is a good time to wrap things up. Really appreciate you sharing all that stuff. It gives me ideas about my setup and things to try out. Let's see. There's a question that came up here from Brian. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us, man. Brian is one of our old attendees here. Glad to see him back. He asks, Claudio, curious about learning Spanish. I assume you speak Portuguese. Is that a head start on or a hindrance for learning Spanish? Um, for me, it's a hindrance because it's for some things, Portuguese and Spanish are very similar. For others, it's completely different. And that bites me every time. Like, so sometimes I think I'm speaking Spanish to some like a native Spanish speaker, and then I see the person going like this, and I'm like, oh, you're not following what I'm saying. And then it's whatever it is that I said in the Spanish version means something completely different than what I meant. And then it's like at that point there's a huge communication breakdown. I'm there thinking that I'm speaking, I'm not really, because I'm relying on my Portuguese, thinking that the similarities will be enough. But sometimes it just bites me back because it's like, nope, it's not the same thing. It's pronounced the same, it's very similar, but the meaning is completely different. So that's why I decided, you know what, let me work through those, right, and try to become fluent in that language, since I have so many Spanish speaking friends, and just the networking. I like traveling, so I do hope to travel to Spanish speaking countries, and I would like to get there and speak their native language. You usually get better support from people, and you just build a better connection with people when you at least try to speak their primary language. So those are like my main things. But yes, it is a hindrance learning Spanish coming from a Portuguese background. Some people would say, no, no, it's so close. To me, it's like, nah, it gets me really messed up. So as I learn it, maybe next week I'll share a little bit of the things that examples that have beaten me on the whole Portuguese Spanish thing, and what resources I'm using to learn Spanish. Because if there are others out there who are thinking about learning Spanish, hey, let's pair up, you know. So that was it. Any other question, guys, before we wrap things up?
That's good. Good start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so glad that we kicked things back into shape, and looking forward to next week already. So if you guys feel like, well, maybe next week I'm going to be sharing something, my tip is, as your day goes by and you run into things that maybe you've learned something you didn't know before, or you've run into something that's like, oh man, that was harder than it should be, write it down, right? And then next week when we get together here, just look at your notes. Like George said, write it down, right?
Notes.
Pull up your notes and then share with us, those things, because maybe there's that one little thing that you've learned that's going to make a huge difference for somebody else. So do not play that down thinking, oh, I don't have anything that's worth sharing. I mean, unless you've been dead, and then there's no way for you to share with us here with all this technology yet. If you've been doing work, if you've been waking up in the morning every day, there's something that's probably worth sharing. So other than that, thank you guys very much for joining in. You have a very pleasant afternoon, and I hope to see you again next week.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.